How you doing, everyone? Welcome back. Well, I tell you what, I saw that press conference today with Donald Trump and Pam Bondi and Whiskey Pete Kegsbreath and who all else was there? Doug Burgum and Janine Pirro and Kash Patel, talking about how they're basically taking over Washington, D.C., taking over the police there. So, local police force is now under federal control. And there is precedent for that in Washington, D.C. That's actually the way it was until the Nixon administration basically signed, I don't remember what the rule is called, but basically gave Washington local control. Instead of the whole city being under federal control, right? So they were able to, elect a mayor, and it gave them a non-voting representative in Congress. Actually, a delegate, not really a member of Congress, but not really a representative, just a delegate, because they don't get to vote. They just get to, go in there. Whatever. I mean, it's almost pointless, really, for them to be there. But at any rate, federalizing a local police force, and then making threats of doing it in other cities, of course, y'all know the culprits: Chicago, Detroit, Baltimore, New York, But I noticed he didn't say a damn word, did he, about, I don't know, New Orleans, which is a reliably red state, home state of the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, who, by the way, lives in a very gerrymandered district. If you ever get a chance, look at the congressional map of Louisiana. His district wraps around another district. Just completely wraps around it. And his is not the only one. There's, Steve Scalise, the guy who called himself David Duke without the baggage, his also wraps around another district like that. And to be fair, I mean, that's not the only state that does gerrymandering, but I'm off topic now. I didn't come here to talk about gerrymandering, did I? I came here to talk about federalizing the police and putting the military on our streets. He says that crime is out of control in Washington. Dude, crime is lower now than it was in your first term. Yes, there was a bit of a spike in 2023. Yes, that happened. But it's down, and it's been decreasing, and it's been steadily decreasing for a long time. And especially in, these other cities that you like to mention, right? Now, as far as like the major cities, like I said, St. Louis and New Orleans are really the top two major cities as far as crime goes. But they're in red states. He's not going to touch those, right? And then, Dallas, Houston, they've also got their issues. I believe the number one top city for crime per capita is in Alabama. Don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% sure there. But, I mean, it's not like a huge city. It's maybe 100,000 people or something like that, right? So it's a good-sized town, but it's not huge. You know, it's not like, we're not talking about like Montgomery, right? We're not talking about Birmingham. So, you know, which by the way are also near the top of the list as far as crime goes. You know, New York, Washington. You know, Chicago gets thrown out there a lot because, yes, they do have a lot of gang shootings and whatnot. But let's look at the population of Chicago. And when you factor it in per capita, they do not have more crime than anywhere else, right? I mean, as far as other cities, right? Yes, they do have their gang violence, and they've got their little pockets of rough areas that you want to avoid, right? And that's pretty much most towns, right? You want to avoid certain areas. But you know, I have never felt unsafe in the city of Chicago. Never. Never once. Been there plenty of times, and I've never felt unsafe. You know, I was in Baltimore one time, right? Got lost in Baltimore. And it was known, it's still known as a pretty heavy crime city, right? And I'm not saying that it's not there, right? In fact, if you're going to tell me that Baltimore has high crime, I'm not going to disagree with you, right? But I got lost in Baltimore, right? And I don't have a GPS, right? I'm thumbing through a road atlas here trying to figure out how to get to where I'm trying to go. Oh, great. What street am I on, you know? And, you know, trying to figure out, you know, open up the atlas, turn to, you know, good thing they had the cities enlarged so I could figure out just exactly where I was in Baltimore, right? But, you know, it looked like a rough area of town. You know, just kind of on the surface. Nah, you don't want to be here. But I had absolutely no fear at all because, you know, not because I'm a fearless person. Everybody has their fears, right? But I had no reason to be afraid that I was going to be the victim of a crime, right? Now, not knowing Baltimore and only having been there like maybe one other time, just passing through, you know, I knew the reputation, but I was just fine, right? You know, I mean, that Trump is out there with his toadies saying that, you know, you're going to get shot, and you're going to get mugged, and you're going to get killed, and that's exact. You're going to get mugged and robbed and shot and killed and raped and all of this, right? The only time anything ever remotely close to that happened to me happened one time, and that was in Fayetteville, North Carolina, right? That's the only time anything close to that happened to me. And part of that was my own fault for having too much to drink and not holding back enough cash to make sure I could call a cab, right? That was on me, right? I mean, it's not my fault that that person was a criminal, of course, that robbed me that night, but I put myself in a position to cross paths with that person. Not blaming myself for being robbed, just for being in that position, right? That's the only time that's ever happened to me, and I've been in some so-called rough areas, right? I've been to St. Louis, I've been to Chicago, I've been to DC, Baltimore, San Antonio, Houston. Actually, no, not Houston. I only passed through Houston, but Dallas. Been to Dallas. Never had any issues. Never feared for my safety or for my life. Right? Vegas. None of it. Had no fear. Denver. And this is hyperbole that he's throwing out there. He's saying that this is a crime-infested city. What it is he knows that he's about to do some things that people are going to protest, right? And he wants to get rid of that in advance. He is also, don't let him fool you. This is very thinly veiled racism at that. Because, they were talking about, all these young kids that are committing crime. Well, guess who makes up something like 51% of the kids in Washington, D.C.? They don't look like they would be my kids. Yeah. 51% are black. Right? He says he's going to get rid of the slums. A slumlord, getting rid of the slums. Yeah, great. So, they're getting rid of homeless encampments, which black people are disproportionately homeless in D.C. They make up the largest number. They make up the largest number of people in D.C., something like 45% maybe. It's in the 40s. The percentage of black people, or the percentage of the population that is black in D.C. is in the 40s. The percentage is in the 40s. So don't let him fool you, right? Basically, he's just trying to get these people, out of sight, out of mind. They don't exist. And he tells the cops, hey, you can do whatever the hell you want, Whatever the hell you want. Great. So, his slogan now is, you spit, we hit. Right? But if he's telling the cops they can do whatever they want, great, you hock a loogie in a cop's face and you're going to get a bullet to your face. Think it won't happen. And guess what's going to happen, right? Guess what's going to happen? You remember the Black Lives Matter protests? Put those on steroids. Because I'll guarantee the very first person will be black. And then there's going to be another one that will also be black. And that's really who they're going to target, right? Because only black people are criminals, right? Or black people are inherently criminals, right? Yeah, that's the way they see it. We've got to stand up against this. We cannot let them get away with this. Take a stand. Take a stand now. And I'll see you next time.